Right, hi guys, this is Owen Blythe for V3 Racing, and today's Hotlap tutorial is the Ferrari GT3 around Spa, in preparation for this weekend's Creventic iRacing Endurance Series, which is new to iRacing this year. Right, so we're coming onto the lap right now, so it's always important to get a very good exit from the bus stop. So coming into turn 1, we're generally using the end of this dust patch here as a braking marker, and if you can't see this, the 100 board just before is generally also a good point you can use. It's always a generally good idea here to roll onto the brake pedal in the Ferrari. Try and keep the best out of the ABS as you can. For turn 1, you should be aiming for the apex, but it's not very critical to be hitting the apex at turn 1. It's more about getting on that throttle as early as possible and as hard as possible, and try and carry it out as far as you can without getting the off track here. Generally, you can just not overstep this white line with the centre of your car and you'll get away with the off track. But it's important to straighten the wheel up and try and go as far wide as you can so you can get on the throttle as early as possible. Coming down into the source, you want to try and cut as much here as you can. Switch over, hug the right hand side, and with the Ferrari you need to turn a lot more right than what you think you would need to because of the understeer as it washes out over the top. Try and cut just as much as this left-hander as you can. Like I said before, try not to centre the car over the white line. That one just there. Any more than that and you'll get the off-track. Any more than that and you'll get the slowdown. Go back on board into Laptime. So into here, I'm braking just before the start of the curb. If you can't see the curb, the 100 marker again is a very good reference point if you're behind another car. Roll on the brake, as I said before, about 60-ish%. Try not to hit the ABS if you can help it. You want to try and position your right side tyres on this part of the curb. Any more onto this grass and you'll get an off track. You see on board here, just coming off of it as we switch over to the left hand side. And again, try to just place your tyres on that. Any more than that and the car might even pull itself around and over rotate. So on the throttle here, we are just getting on throttle between the two things, lifting off to give the car a chance to rotate. Back on throttle again. Don't touch this curb when you're switching direction, otherwise you will spin. And again, coming off the throttle slightly to get the rotation in. As soon as we meet the apex here, at this right-hander, just going up onto the curb. You can use a bit more than that if you want. Picking up the throttle again, running it all the way out wide. And again, here you don't want to be using much more exit curb than this, otherwise you will run the risk of getting an off-track. Into the hairpin, using the curb on the left here when it starts as the braking point. Again, not really crossing the 50-60% boundary on the brakes. You can either hug the inside here or take a bit more of the line that I've took here, which is a bit deeper, and then try and get on the throttle more aggressively for a better exit. Here, I don't really have a solid braking marker for this, but in this session I was using just before this shadow here as a rough reference. You don't want to be braking too hard, just enough of the brake to get the car to rotate. Again, use this part of the curb, no more than that you'll get the off track. And on exit here, you can maybe use a tiny bit more of the curb and runoff than what I did, but any more than that you're risking the off track. Into P1 here, you can use the curb, but you have to be fully mounted on top of the curb. If you're just slightly touching it, any more than what I am here, you will just spin. If we go back on board, you'll see that I'm braking just before the light on the right here. You can use a number of things as a braking point here, but it really is what's going to be best for you. If you brake, you can brake a bit later into that corner, but you run the risk of the back end stepping out. So you see I'm trailing just a tiny bit of brake into the apex. You probably can trail a tiny bit more. Get on the throttle. Try and hook it back around to the second apex if you can, but as long as you're carrying momentum, it's fine. Into here, braking just under the barrier, just before the curb, to make sure you get it right hooked up for this right-hander. For this left-hander here, I actually run wide than what you're supposed to do, but because I carried the momentum, which is very important in this car, I actually, through my optimum, did not go as quick through this section as I did beforehand, and I think it's because I carried quite a lot of speed through this right-hander and then carried the momentum through the left-hander, so it's not that important to hit the apex there. Then as we come into this right-hander, braking just before I start the curb. I'm not riding the curb, but if you choose to ride the curb, that is fine. But like Puon, you have to get fully on top of it. Again, up here, just kissing the inside of this curb. Again, using this little extra part of the curb to run the car on. And then here, no more than this on the exit, otherwise you will get the off track. See on board, that's how much I'm using. And into here we are just lifting slightly just to get the car to bite a bit and not understeer on the way out. Then on the run to Blanchimont, make sure you're as wide as you can be. Lift off slightly just to get the car to rotate in a bit more. As soon as you feel like either at the apex or the car's bitten enough for you to not get the off track, you get back on the throttle. And here on exit, you can maybe use a bit more of the runoff here in the curb without getting the off track. But then coming into the bus stop, I'm using the start of the dust patch as a reference point. However, the 150 board here is also a good reference point. Braking on the way in, making sure you can be a bit more pointing towards the curb because you want to open up the bus stop as much as possible. And here it's really important, as you can see, to get on that throttle as early and as aggressively as you possibly can. Try to avoid the wheel spin. And that's a lap at Spa-Francorchamps.